Welcome to Project Me with Tiffany Carter, the podcast and posse. I'm your host, Tiffany, and I just had a massive coughing attack right when I did an epic intro for this episode. So that's fun. I didn't think you guys needed to hear that. So I want to give you guys a permission slip today in order to go after the very thing that I know you have in your heart and soul that you want to do, but you just have something that keeps preventing you from really going all in on it. You think about it, you fantasize about it, you might even write about it when you go and look at different people online or read a blog or a book or an article. You get inspired and you're like, yeah, I need to do that. Or maybe you have a couple glasses of rosé and you're like, I'm going to go and do this thing. I'll be on Shark Tank. Yet you never do it. And the thing that is missing is you're not giving yourself permission to do it or know even how to get to that point of giving yourself that permission to really go all in and go for it, regardless of what anyone else thinks. If they think you're crazy, if you think you're crazy, if you don't have the money, if you don't have the time, if you feel the odds are stacked against you, if you don't give yourself permission, it's not going to happen. And there is no one better than the guest I'm brought on today in order to talk about giving yourself that permission to really go for it. Gainette is this beautiful soul who I've been following for quite a long time now. She's someone where I look at her Instagram and I'm like, this girl's like 80 different things going on and her energy is so light. She never seems tired. And I was like, God, you just like inspire me to do so much more and make such a bigger impact on doing greater things. You help me truly from not playing small, because I more so can play small, not based on me not giving myself permission or not believing in myself, but because I'm a lazy ass. So I just want you guys to hear a little bit about her. So if you're not familiar with Gainette, I mean, aside from the fact her name's epic, and that is her Instagram handle, by the way, but she is the founder of an amazing company called Best Period, and that's period with a T. So you're going to hear about that. She is an article writer. She's been featured in tons of publications, Forbes, CBS, Yahoo, NBC, Huffington Post, Black Enterprise, on and on and on. She's a keynote speaker. She has an amazing podcast that I'm going to be on. And I want you guys just to hear us dish on this so you can absorb this energy and be able to grant yourself this damn permission to go for it, regardless of your circumstances in life. I'm so happy that you're on the show. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for inviting me. Super excited to be here.
So tell me, I mean, you have so many things going on, and to people on the outside, it can seem like, oh, this just all happened for you. Like you're just #blessed and things just fell into place and you're stunningly gorgeous. So that makes your life easy. And people make up stories about us, right?
They definitely can make up some stories, but #blessed wouldn't be the first hashtag I'd use for my story for sure. But thank you for all of that, for sure. I always say that in life we have nudges, right? And those nudges, when they get ignored, turn into pushes. When pushes get ignored, they turn into punches. And I've had quite a few punches along the way, and that's what's gotten me to these places. And because of those punches, though, they were necessary, because had I not had them, I wouldn't have known how to get up so fast and to bounce back when things did get difficult. So yeah, for sure.
So when I look at your account now, I at least know not to make assumptions about anybody, because people make assumptions about me. I mean, I have a highly traumatic childhood. And a lot of people, when you're successful and have money, will go, oh, well, she must have inherited it, or she married a rich guy, or, whatever. People, that's just how people are.
People be peopling, yes, for
sure. So what is your story? Because I know the odds weren't stacked in your favor at all.
For sure, yeah. So, I mean, we'd have to rewind from the very beginning. I feel like I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit as a child. I mean, I used to cut up my dad's t-shirts while he was sleeping to make clothes for my size Barbie. and sold some of them to friends at school, got in trouble for that. I picked neighbors' roses, didn't realize that I was stealing at the time, sold them on the side of the street to tourists. They probably thought I was homeless. So that was my intro to entrepreneurship. I've always known how to make money, even as a kid. However, I ignored that. When you start to grow, you start doing things that seem more acceptable. And back then, being a lawyer was really cool, or at least it seemed like it. You look on TV, I didn't have any entrepreneurs around me as examples. So that was what I said I wanted to do. I wanted to be a lawyer. And then fast forward a bit, I actually had a tumor on my windpipe, a benign tumor. So it wasn't cancerous. However, at 14, I was actually only the fourth person to get the procedure where my tumor was located on my windpipe. And where they had to go through my back. And with that, two of the three people that got it before me actually did not survive. So I knew going into this that I had a 1 in 3 chance of surviving this operation, but I was 14. So that kind of gave me a little perception, like shifted my perception, I should say, that life is, it can be fragile, that it's finite. However, again, I was 14. I'm like, yeah, I still want to climb the corporate ladder and do something amazing in my mind, right? So that was the first, I guess, push. After that, I still, again, studying, wanted to be a lawyer. I went and received a Rotary Exchange scholarship. So I spent a year in Maracaibo, Venezuela, and I was actually had a hostage-like situation. I was held hostage at gunpoint by corrupt cops, surprisingly enough, for hours in my home. So it's like it's a long story. We could spend the whole hour just on that, but at the end of it, I remember just being so frustrated. And, I was there with my host family and all the kids. So it was me, my brother, and my host sister. And we were just like, oh my goodness, this is missing. And I'm like, yeah, they even stole my underpants. Like they took everything from the drawers. And my parents, the host parents, came over and they're like, but you have your life. And I remember at that point, it was like a switch flipped, and it was almost like, okay, this is perception. Like this is perspective, I should say, where it's like, okay, you did lose a whole lot, but you got a life and you got this life for a reason. And I remember when I was being held hostage, thinking if I survive this, it's got to be more to life. But I didn't know what that more was at the time. And in my mind, I still thought it was law. So I left Venezuela, went back home. So home for me was Bermuda, went back to Bermuda. And a couple months later, I was 18, just had turned 19 actually. And I was pregnant. So I was a teen mom. I refused to be a statistic. So at that point, it kind of cut off the law school thing, but I knew I could still go school to like the Bermuda College as opposed to my school I wanted to go and all of that now that I was pregnant. So again, still wanted to climb the corporate ladder and wanted to set that example. But again, my parents then got sick. Again, punches and pushes kept coming. And that's what really started to push me to entrepreneurship full time. Well, starting the entrepreneurship journey was because my parents were sick. My dad had to get one of his kidneys removed. He got both kidneys removed, but the first time he got one kidney removed. And I had to fight for my time. Like I had to ask for that time off to travel with him because he was in Leahy, so just outside of Boston. So he was in Leahy. I had to fight to get that time off. Then my mom, that was 2013. In 2015, my mom had esophageal cancer. And again, had to fight to get that time off to travel with him. And I'm like, you know what? I've been given so much of my time, my life here, and something that belongs to me truly, which is my time. I have to ask for this. So that just didn't sit right in my spirit. So I knew I had to do more. Actually, while my mom was in the hospital, she went Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. And while she was there, I actually wrote my first book. And that became the I guess the stepping stone for entrepreneurship for me, because from that book I started teaching people how to self-publish successfully. From self-publishing successfully, that grew into a sustainable business, and from there I started teaching people how to set up businesses. So it just grew from there. And then now fast forward to 2021 and I have a menstrual cup brand. Well, really, I always say it's a brand for periods, and menstrual cups just happen to be the first product, because truly, I like to say it's the genesis of a mega brand. It's going to be so much more than just menstrual cups. But here we are today. So it's a long drawn out story to say that there have been a lot of things that have pushed me this way. In between all of that time, I've been like broke, completely broke. I had a $20 bill and some change in my name. And I went when my mom was going to the hospital, or she was out there in the hospital. I went with my daughter. We were traveling and we had our suitcases. I wasn't thinking straight. I'm like, we're going to go out there for her surgery. And they told me $50. because suitcases were $25 each. And I'm like, I don't have that, and I had to make up some little white lie. I don't even remember what I said, but I'm just like, oh no, I left my credit card home, something. My boyfriend's mom, who's not my mother-in-law, she was the one who loaned me that money, and payday was in a couple days. So I gave it to her then, but I wrote myself an email on the plane that day. And I'm like, never am I going to put myself, and especially not my daughter, in that situation again. Like, I cannot continue to live paycheck to paycheck and really working my behind off for a job that could care two craps if I'm there or not. They'll replace me tomorrow. So it was a whole lot of perspective shifts over many, many years to get me to where I am today.
Wow. I mean, I knew some of your story. I'm only laughing because the some of your story I knew was already enough. I didn't know all these other things. We have some interesting similarities in our stories. It's interesting though, like you literally almost died from having the tumor, right? And having that surgery. I mean, you could have almost died.
For sure.
Then you were held hostage, almost died. And yet you still said, well, I think the path for me is to be a lawyer, right? You still said that. And consciously, did you and I like to say above the neck, meaning in our brain versus how we feel in our body. So above the neck, were you like, I want to be a lawyer because that's going to make the most money and I can maybe help people and it's successful? Did you not see any other path at that point?
At that point, I saw people in corporate careers, right? But law just seemed like the pinnacle of success for me because that's what I saw around me when I was a kid. I won some essay competitions, got to spend the day with judges and a few people. So even my summers, I spent the time interning at law firms. So that's what I saw, and that's what was the pinnacle of success in my brain. So yeah, it was definitely from the head up thinking that, but there were so many things over that time. I believe we just align ourselves with where we need to be. So when my dad was in the hospital, I started watching different YouTube videos that showed me pieces of entrepreneurship, but it still didn't push me enough to wanna go into it like wholeheartedly. And strangely enough, do you know what it was that flipped the switch for entrepreneurship?
What was
The
it?
Alchemist book. The Alchemist book, a
Really?
nonfiction. It was a fictional book, and I very rarely read fictional books. But this book, for some reason, it spoke to me when Paulo Coelho was talking about finding your treasure. And I'm like, yeah, I need that. And it's not in a law firm. Like, I realized at that point, it was more and it was something else. I didn't care too much about the other things. It was more so what's going to light me up. But definitely in my mind, it was the legal, it looked sexy, right? It's a sexy career in my head at the time. I was like, they make a lot of money for sure. So that's just what I wanted to do for those reasons, especially because I didn't have any money.
So how did you get yourself to even want to spend the time to write a book, let alone even think you could monetize being an author when you really didn't already have money?
I I guess when you have life-threatening situations, it's nothing much can happen that really shakes you, right? So because I'm like, what's the worst that can happen? Because if I do write it, if it does fail, then that's fine because it's already failed if I hadn't written it anyway, because no one's going to read it. What's the worst that can happen? No one's going to read it. It's self-published, so it wasn't like I poured a whole lot of money into it to begin with. So for me, it was just like, you know what? It's now or never. Put it out there. I was scrolling on Pinterest one night. It's amazing how social media works. I was scrolling on Pinterest one night and I saw a quote that said, if you needn't be forgotten as soon as you're dead, either write something worth reading or do something worth writing about. And I'm like, you know what? I want to do both. I want to do both of those things, right? And that's when the book idea came in my mind. And then I consult on Google because she's wise beyond her years. I dropped out of UOL, so University of London. I was in their economics program because I was doing banking and finance, because at this point I left the law career behind and I was actually in a bank. And I was just like, you know what? Let me just do this, you know?
So knowing that you had, I mean, you kind of didn't really have a backup plan. So you started this with little money, having a kid, having parents that weren't well. Was your dad alive at this point?
Yeah. So both of them did survive their surgeries.
So, but not the healthiest of people, right? It's not
Mm-hmm.
like you had, a rich parents where you're like, if I fail, I have, somewhere to go. You really started and went after this with a lot stacked against you. Would you agree with that?
Oh, for sure. And my parents, my mom drives the bus. My dad is a salesman for Procter and Gamble. And what was crazy at that time, my dad had left his job like a couple years before he got sick and went to work with a friend who he was taking money out of his paycheck every week for insurance. And then once my dad got sick, we found out he didn't have any insurance. So there was no insurance. So I had that whole burden of also wondering like, how are we going to pay this? Because it's going to be at least $100,000. And I started doing some really grassroots things like potlucks and just the most random things to attempt to raise money for this, golf tournaments, and just trying to make do. And that's when I'm like, all these things, all of these situations created this knowing that what I am doing isn't it. Like it has to be an easier way to live. And I remember sitting at my desk thinking, yo, this can't be life. This isn't it. This, waking up to go to someone else's job, to work for someone else, doing someone else's job you could care less about. I remember I had bought a new bike at one point and a hurricane was happening outside and the bike got messed up and the boss at the time made a joke about it. Like, oh, haha, if you want to put your bike somewhere, put it somewhere else. And I'm just like, that was $3,000. Like, so all of these things were playing in my mind and reminded me that they really don't give a crap what you do or how you need to give a crap for yourself. And you need to give a crap for those around you that are dependent on you.
What's interesting though, and I've been, I guess you could say, victim to this as well as someone who was I used to be like a really sick codependent. If someone told me, oh, your favorite color should be blue, I was like, okay, it's blue. I mean, that I had no self-worth. And what's interesting, and I know a lot of you guys listening, have this going on too, where you get stuck in the story of, well, I don't have much money. I'm a single mom. My family doesn't support me. People think I'm crazy. So therefore, then you don't give yourself permission to go for it. But you gave yourself permission to do it anyway, to do it regardless. What did you do in your mind to do it anyway? Because there's no way you weren't kind of scared or nervous. I mean, it was risky.
Everything I do, I do it terrified. Absolutely everything. And I feel like from birth, I've had this not competitive edge, but I've had something innately that's just like, do it. Like, what is the worst that can happen? And I always ask myself that. Like, that's always a reoccurring theme. Like, what's the worst that can happen? They laugh at you. Okay. They may laugh if you don't do it, So it's just that it was that playing in my head and saying, well, who am I doing it for at the end of the day? I can sit here and complain again about not being able to do the things I need to do because I don't have the money, or I can, chuck it up and just do what I've got to do and attempt to change my situation because no one's here to change it for me.
Mm. Yeah, I think a big fear that a lot of people get into is, what if I write the book? What if I, create the business or, start my Instagram page and pour all this time and energy into creating great content and videos and blah, blah, blah. And then nothing comes of it. And I've wasted all that time and energy. What would you have to say to that?
I would ask, is it wasted? You're still able to pour yourself into something you enjoy, because what's going to be the reverse of that? If you don't spend that time pouring into this new book or business, what will you be doing instead? Reading someone else's book, looking at their business on Instagram? Are you going to be consuming their content or creating your own? So it's the time's still going to be there. The time's still going to pass. It's just asking yourself, how are you going to use it? I mean, I can look at stuff that I've done. My old YouTube videos make me cringe. Reading my book today makes me cringe. Whenever somebody brings it up, I'm like, oh gosh, people are still buying that. All of these things happen because we have to grow through them, right? It's not even just going through them, it's growing through them. So yeah, you do need to start that Instagram page. Maybe people aren't going to look initially. Maybe, the only reason you fail, or the only way you do fail, I believe, is if you stop, because failure is the lack of success. But if you make a commitment to yourself not to give up, you could pivot, but not give up, then can you truly fail? If you always commit to getting back up when you get pushed, when you get pulled down, to stem back up, can you truly fail at it? So if no one watches it, that's fine. No one's watching it because you hadn't created it. So keep producing it. Maybe you'll then get 2 views. Maybe afterwards you'll get, 50, and then that 50 turns to 500. But even when you get two, even when you get one, that's one person that's there listening to you, or that's going to benefit from what it is you put out there.
So many people want to skip that part. I call it sitting in the dirty diaper because it's uncomfortable, right?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
it's uncomfortable when you've poured all this time right into writing a book, and let's say you put it on Amazon or you put it out there and it's like a couple people maybe bought it, maybe, or you put out this great video or you poured your heart out into a post, or you've made an offer for people to, hire you one-on-one or a course or group coaching, and no one buys it. I see so many people getting completely destroyed and so disappointed because their expectations are so skewed, and they're not willing to sit in that discomfort period and having trust that it will eventually work. What have you done when you've been stuck in that period? Because you have several businesses now, so there's no way you've not been in that period of time.
Oh man, I resided in that dirty diaper for a really long time. And I think what's helpful is finding other people who were also there, but they've made their way out. And you don't have to know them, but you can read their book or watch their YouTube video about their story or something like that. So just to give an example, let this be the dirty diaper story for you. If you're listening to this in that position right now, when I first launched, I had what I called the Book Boss. It was a Book Boss program that was teaching people to self-publish successfully. I no longer have this, but when I did have it, I put it out there, worked on it, did so much for it. Like I produced really a top notch at the time, I thought so, like program. So as I did, we were doing a tele seminar because this is way back in 2015.
Wait, is that like where you dial in with like the phone?
Oh yeah.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
dying. Okay, go ahead.
I was too afraid to like do a video or even mess up on a screen or anything at all, even with the slideshow. So it was a tele seminar. And do you know the phone cut off right before the pitch? Like right before I got to the end and shared
Of course it
about the
did.
program. So people got all the information and then they never even learned about the program. So I sent an email, I did the normal little funnel thing that they teach you to do, whatever. So I did that, but not a single person purchased. It's fine. I stood back up, and a couple months later, I attempted to do it again and, planned a bit better. And from that plan, I had 3 people purchase. And one of those 3 asked for a refund because they had like buyer's remorse. They didn't even open anything, but they was just like, you know what? You have to use that money for something else. So I had 2 sales. And then fast forward a couple years, I was able to create a program that did 70K in 7 days, so we grow through it. And if I were to stop on that first time and it cut off before I pitched, then I would have never been able to get to where I am today. I would have lost so many lessons along the way.
How did you kind of dust yourself off and go, okay, like I'm going to launch this again? When you launched it the second time, one person asked for a refund and you had 2 people purchase. What got you to do it again?
One of the 2 people that purchased, they put their book out. So seeing someone actually benefit from something I created, I should say, was super helpful because that's that confirmation that what you created actually has value. So it was that piece. And then it was the other piece of going to my job every day and being miserable. So you have to get to a place where you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, right? Where you get to work and you're just like, listen, I need to launch it again, because if not, then next year, this time, it's going to be the same situation. And I just got to a place where I couldn't, my soul was not comfortable resting in the same situation, no matter how uncomfortable it would get. And I knew it would get. I just wasn't comfortable. It was even less comfortable staying where I was. And that was the deciding factor. I'm like, you know what? I have to do this. And being able to see others doing it as well in so many different industries, I knew it was possible. And even if I hadn't, in my mind, I would have just been like, listen, I'll just be the first, there has to be a first to everything. I just couldn't be there. My soul just was, I wrote a poem a couple years ago that was talking about this. My soul felt like a caged bird. Like I felt like my wings were clipped and I was just stuck in this place. And in order for me to get that freedom, right? And for me, it was more so not even just the freedom of like the money or even the time. At that point, it was just the freedom to decide that I want to do something different. And that was the deciding factor to push me forward.
And a lot of people think, okay, well, I feel that way and I'm in a, corporate type career. But so you guys know, and if you're longtime listeners, you're familiar with the story. But I felt this way with my other business that I still have today that I've had 13 years, which, is predominantly, doing digital marketing in the pharmaceutical and medical space. I'm very grateful for it. It's very lucrative, it's $1 million business, all those things. But like you said, my soul wasn't lit up. I wasn't fulfilled. I knew there was more. And so out came, right, Project Me with Tiffany Carter. So that leads me into asking you, you could have stayed doing this whole, book, so to speak, coaching business that you had, because you were obviously making great money doing it. You could have just kept writing more and more books. But from what I can tell with your brand Best Period, you did make a pivot. So what led you to go there?
I'm a very much an intuitive entrepreneur. So many people follow the charts and what the money's saying. And for me, I'm very much following my gut because it has not led me astray to date. Right. So for me, the book stuff, it was fun. I mean, tons of authors came through the program, wrote the book. And it was still great seeing that success, but it got to a point where I'm like, you know what? I don't want to teach people to write their book. I want to teach them how to rewrite their lives through business. So from there, I pivoted to helping people set up businesses and being able to leave their 9 to 5. And I just constantly made little pivots. And even with the Best Period business, this one, it seemed kind of random, but again, it's that gut feeling. I had interviewed someone on my podcast and she had a product-based business, and just talking to her and hearing about the excitement of being able to create something, a physical manifestation of an idea, it just sounded really exciting to me. But it created like this little burn, like a little fire in my stomach. I'm like, oh yeah, I want to do this. I don't know what I want to create. I'll just give it some time. I spoke to her sister a couple of weeks later, who's also a physical product entrepreneur. And I went to sleep. I mean, I thought of a million different ideas, but again, I follow my gut. So I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not interested enough in that to even pursue it. I'm looking at my laptop right now. Underneath it, I have an EMF blocker to help with blocking radiation. I was like, oh, maybe I should do a chain that blocks radiation. I'm like, yeah, no, I cannot talk about that for more than a day. Like, it's just boring to me. So I went to sleep. I'm like, you know what? If it's meant for me, I'll figure it out. I went to sleep. I woke up and my period was on. So I went to grab a menstrual cup that it didn't tick the boxes. I've tried many over the years. I've known for a while now they're better for our bodies, for the environment. They save us money. They have all these great benefits. However, I knew that the ones I tried just didn't have enough capacity for my heavy flow days. I hated the little baggies they came with. It was just so many things I didn't like about them. So when I grabbed the one I was using at the time, I'm like, I got it. I'm going to create a menstrual cup that fixes all the issues I've had with all the ones I've used in the past. And that's how we got here today.
That whole creating a better mousetrap, right, as they say. So you guys don't have to come up with some brand new earth-shattering, invention. It can be making improvements on something that's already out there, bringing more quality to it, being having more inclusivity to it. So when you got this idea, right? That's one thing. A lot of people get stuck in that zone, right? Where they're like having a cocktail and they're like, oh, well, this would be a great idea. And then they see someone else doing it on Shark Tank and it's like, oh, I should have done something with it. What made you go all in on this? Because that is a very big decision, especially when it comes to a product-based business, because there's a lot of money you have to put out
Oh,
there.
yeah. Oh, for sure. So with the product-based business, unlike the book boss, it is a ton of money. One thing was I had the cushion of my other businesses, right? So I didn't have to seek investors or anything like that because now I had income coming in, substantial income that could feed this this project. So I did have that. However, one of my superpowers is I'm a fast starter. If I want to create something, I figure it out. I would stay up figuring it out. If there's no answers for it, I will create the answer. And that's just something I do. So once that happened, I mean, it is a lot of money. I have custom molds because it is a one-of-a-kind design. Those were tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars just to create them. So a lot of money did go into it, but for me, again, it goes back to you can't fail if you don't stop. And I knew there was a space for this. Of course, while I do follow my gut, I also did tons of research. So even something as simple as going on Amazon and checking out the keywords and seeing that, at the time it was 450,000 people were searching for menstrual cups a month. Now it's 550. So it's gone up 100,000 since I started. But I knew there was a desire or at least curiosity about it. And I knew I used to be cup curious at one point. And as a Black woman, I know that in my space, there are many people who have seen them, but they don't feel like it's for them, right? We are in a place where it's really what I like to say, they'll put us in the pictures, but we know that it wasn't created necessarily for us. So for me, one of the issues I had with menstrual cups in the past is that they didn't have enough capacity, and menstrual cups on average carry way more than a tampon or pad. However, I found this out after, once I started doing my research, a study showed that Black women on average tend to have heavier flows and are 2 to 3 times more likely to have fibroids. So I'm like, oh, got it. We're going to have heavier capacity so that it can be heavy, like it can hold heavy flow, but at the same time, it can be comfortable enough for those who have lighter flow. So I wanted us to see ourselves reflected in it as well. So even the instruction manual has brown buddies, because I've never opened an instruction manual and seen my skin color in there.
No,
right?
never.
So I did that with this, and it's not saying that it's just for Black people. However, what it is saying is that representation matters and we should see ourselves reflected. So there are a few things I wanted to do and change about it. And because I hadn't seen those things, I'm like, yeah, it needs to happen. Because again, I know people are cup curious. I see that with the searches. I've seen, even when I started doing my research and asking people that were following my main page about menstrual cups, they're like, yeah, I've seen them. They look kind of weird. So I knew from the beginning it will be an educational brand, because it has to be a teaching brand, not just for Black women, but for anybody who's bleeding, because menstrual cups are still just 5% of the market for menstrual products. 95% of people use pads and tampons. So I knew from the very beginning it was an educational thing. But yeah, it all came down to me saying, this is what I'm going to create because there's a need for it. There's curiosity around it. It's definitely something that's going to be beneficial. And I'm not going to allow it to fail, because I'm not going to stop. So if something doesn't work, it's just a matter of pivoting. Because it is so expensive, it was a lot of research going into it to begin with, so that it didn't require a whole lot of changes. But definitely, it's just a matter of, we're going to do this. And before we even launched, we had retailers on board. And within 24 hours, we had people reaching out in South Korea who wanted it in their stores. Like, because so much effort went into it from the very beginning. And I feel like some brands, you can feel the soul through them, right? And fake can be felt. So I feel like the soul for the business was able to be felt. And I knew that from the very beginning. So because of that, it's going to be a home run, because I said it will be.
Do you guys feel that? And you always hear me say, people can be fake, but energy can't be faked. And she right. And she just said fake can be felt. Right. That energy she had, if you don't have that level of conviction about whatever it is, physical product or not, if you don't have that level of passion and conviction, it's not going to get you through all the hard times, because there is no way you haven't had manufacturing issues, disappointments. Maybe you had a big interview set up and then they canceled, or you had to have had a lot of shit along the way.
Tiffany, I started this in March 2020. That's the start of COVID. Like, we had so many issues. I have my factory, it's a US factory. That's the other thing. Many menstrual cups were made in China. I wanted to bring it to the US. So the factory was shut down because someone was exposed to COVID. They didn't have it, but someone in their family had it. So the factory shut down, which pushed things back. I changed the date for launch so many times. I wanted to launch before Christmas so bad, but I just couldn't, because it was outside of my ability to change. And that's one thing I've learned being on this product side is that with the service-based business, you can move things around. You have control, even when you have employees, even when you have contracted, people you're working with, you still have the control of when things are getting done, who's doing it, where it's going, how it's looking. With a product-based business, you have to let go of so much of that control because you literally don't have the skill set to create what you need. There was a team of engineers creating it. So I had to literally depend on so many people to get it done, and delays were just one small piece of the headache. Like, we're still waiting for Amazon to approve the account. We're now almost a year. We're almost a year in.
Really? See,
Oh, yeah.
this surprises me just because of most businesses, right? Especially big businesses. It's always about what's in it for them, the bottom line, because I consult with a lot of these companies. And this is an obvious winner. So I would think that they would have, made it a priority to fast track it.
Amazon, you don't even speak to anybody. You're writing on the case logs and it goes to their bots that kick you back a message about something you didn't ask about. And it's just frustrating. So it's an endless circle, which is what I'm in right now. Where I'm like, can you please approve this pending application? Hey, you'd like your application penned. You want your application to go through. Click here and send a message through the case log. I'm like, that's how I got here. So it's bots. And that's just the trouble of Amazon, I find. So that's one of the many issues. We've had so many with this business, but that's one of them.
And did you have people, even though for a while, it sounds like, right, you kept going with your other business because it was funding, right, best period. Did you have people in your life that thought you were a little crazy to shift away from something that is already you've built and you worked hard for, that's making money, to something that's going to cost a shit ton of money up front, that's a lot higher risk? Did you have a lot of that energy around you?
I would say when I first left, so I left my 9 to 5 this would make 2 years actually. So I left my 9 to 5. And when I did that, I had some of those people, even my boss, like the day I gave him my resignation, the very last day I was there, he was like, oh, you can always come back. Do you want to come on part-time? I'm like, I don't need this job. That's why I'm leaving. Like, they couldn't wrap their head around being able to make money outside the corporate world. So I have had some of those people, but really I separate myself from people who are the naysayers, who are like what I like the energy mosquitoes, right? Mosquitoes, to me, they are the one useless insect. You're like, what is your purpose in life? So when I have people like that, I just get rid of them, right? I'm like, okay, no longer in my sphere. But it's funny because when I did start doing the product-based business, because it was costing a whole lot of money, I'm like, you know what? I don't want to be pulling all of this money away from Game Changing Industries, which is the other piece of the business. And I started asking family. I asked my stepdad at that time. I'm like, hey, I'm doing this menstrual cup brand, the whole face. Like, what? You're doing a what? Oh, no, I'm not interested. Tiffany, when I tell you, the first week when they started seeing all the people sharing it, all the retail stores running out, like when they started seeing all of the hype around it, that's when I had everyone coming back like, oh, do you still need that? No, we're good. Like, we're good over here. So it's funny how it's almost as if you have to prove it to people, but I'm not in the business of proving anything. It's just like, you're with me? No? Okay, cool. Let me move on and do it anyway, because that's the plan.
And you use that to energize you. You have kind of that like personality like I do, where it's like, I remember when I first started my podcast, and even though I'm, a former TV newscaster, I had people in this online space, which you guys know makes me laugh because there's so much ridiculousness in it. And there's a lot of fake, where they wouldn't be a guest on my show. And I thought it was hysterical. Like when I first started, and now they're pitching me, and it's like, oh, sweet titty, honey, your ass is not coming on my show now.
It is so funny. Yes. And I was thinking about that the other day, because there are some people that I reached out to that I actually knew that reached out to me when they needed things. And I'm like, hey, can I send you a cup? I was gifting them a cup. They didn't even, I saw they read it. They wasn't responding, and they are pretty influential. They have connections with celebrities, and, they work in the TV industry and things like that. I had no asks. All I wanted to know, other than, can I send you this cup? I'm not asking you to give it to anyone. I'm not asking for anything. I'm not even asking for a review. And I just didn't get any responses. I'm like, okay, I got you. Because the last couple messages were from them to me asking questions of me and can I help with different things. So when I get that, it's just a mental note. I don't hold grudges or anything like that, but it is a chip, right? It just creates that piece where you're like, okay, well, I'm going to do it. And then, when Oprah tells you about me, then you'll pay attention kind of thing,
I agree. Like, cause we don't want to hold on to that any grudge or like negative energy, because that'll lower your vibration. But like anyone in your life, whether it's, someone online, a friend, a family member, whatever, who isn't getting it, a lot of it's their own fear projected on you. People can be really self-involved. And I use that to fuel me forward. And it sounds like you do as well. It's like,
For
I'll
sure.
just use that to, fuel me forward. There's no way you can have great success and have everyone cheering you on. You have got to give that permission to yourself and believe in yourself and what you're doing more than anything else. Because if you rely on other people, they're going to let you down. Don't you
For
think?
sure. For sure. I call that the Beyonce mindset. I remember watching a documentary some years ago, and she was saying she loves when people make her mad. And it's even better right before she goes on stage because she channels all of that on the stage. So when she reads an article that says she did something she knows was absurd, like she would never, she's like, you know what? I just read it. I tell my team to show me the social media screenshots when people are saying bad things before I go onto stage. And she uses that as fuel when she goes up there and just pours it into her performances, which is why they're so lively. So yeah, I call that the Beyonce, the Beyonce.
I love that because there's no way to avoid it. So like use it and fuel it. So I want you guys to go check out Best Period. I mean, obviously the product's amazing. And, I just want to say thank you for creating, creating something and acknowledging that what was out there wasn't working. I don't know if you've heard this from people, but there can be a shame associated with having a heavier flow. I'm
Mm-hmm.
someone who I have fibroids, so I have like, without being like grossing you guys out, but you know what I mean. There's lots,
Mm-hmm.
it's not just blood that comes out, it's like clots and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. And I've never used period cups because they're going to overflow. I'm going to be embarrassed. I'm very athletic, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
So you created something like you created something to where you've taken some shame out of it for me. I don't know if you've heard anyone share it on an emotional level about like, there's almost a weird thing around flow. It's like, well, oh, I don't bleed that much.
I have it on my about story where it's like, listen, I don't have a cute period. I call it a cute period, like the unicorn periods that last 0.5 seconds that are super light and people were just really excited about it. Like, no, that's not my case. It's 6 days, it's heavy, So I knew for sure I wanted to create something that did that. And I've had so many people who've had fibroids, who've had heavy flows, and many who just had shame around their period anyway, come out and say, this has been amazing. It's game changing. Like these are words they're constantly using. Some say it's less crampy because they tend to have cramps normally. So there isn't any scientific or clinical evidence to prove menstrual cups stop cramps, but that's a lot of the feedback we're getting. And that makes all the difference when those days are tougher, for sure. I get it. I get it. There's definitely a lot of stigma around something that almost half the population deals with, and it's my job to disrupt that and just challenge people's perception and just talk about things that make us uncomfortable, because the reality is this is something we should be able to talk about just like we would sweating or something, because it's a natural process.
Right. But I also have the same thing around sweating, which I talk a lot about on the show. I'm a sweater. Like
Mm.
I mean, I can sweat walking through a grocery store, right? So there's almost a shame in that. I'm not cute when I go on a hike. Like when a guy would
Mm.
ask me on a date to go on a hike, I'd be like, no, I'm not available till later because that shit ain't cute. And there's right, but why can't we talk about this stuff and normalize it? Who gives a shit? And thank you for doing that. I want you guys to check. First of all, you have to go to Genete's Instagram. And because her first name is so epic, that's literally her handle. Like, who has that? And then you can go in her Instagram bio and you'll see best period. Now it's period with a T, right? So it's best period with a T.com to go to the website, and then you'll see the Instagram page for it and all that content when you go to Gaynette on her Instagram. Are you someone who likes it when people reach out and DM you if they have
Oh,
questions?
100%. And that's another difference I have with the brand, is because I answer questions, and not just answering them. I'm sending you voice notes if you have questions, because period cups can be a bit of a learning curve, or anything you have to ask could be a learning curve, right? So I always, shoot me a message if you have any questions at all. If you enjoyed the episode, let me know as well. I love, love, love speaking with people.
So you guys take a screenshot right now. I want you to share this episode. Like, let's support a sister out, right? Like I'm saying, like you have to support. I don't give a fuck what someone's following is, who they are. That doesn't dictate if you're coming on the show. What you can do for me, and you guys know that, you have to be willing to help lift others up who are starting out, who are early on in business before the thing is sexy. Otherwise, then it's not going to happen for you. You're putting out bad energy out there. So take a screenshot of this episode, share it in your Instagram stories, tag me at Project Me with Tiffany, tag Gaynette. It's Gaynete. So that's Gaynete. I know that 70% of you, because we've polled you, are listening from the shower. So that's fun. Rub a dub dub. But you guys can, when you get out of the shower, if you can't remember Gaynette's handle, just screenshot it, tag me, and I'll make sure when I reshare it in my stories, I tag her. But go check this out. Now, where can they buy these period cups? Is it best to buy them through the website?
Yeah, for sure. Bestperiod.com. And it's funny, I can give them a quick story that helps them remember my handle name. So when I was doing one-on-one coaching and group coaching, I went on to my website trying to show them my about page, which is gaynete.com. And my name is Gaynete, Gaynete. However, when I was typing fast, I forgot the last E, which made it Gaynet, as in gay internet. And all this gay porn came up, and like I was just like, oh my gosh. And they're like, what's up with your site? It's like, no, I forgot the E at the end. So that's an easy way for people to remember. It's Gaynet, and then it's another E at the end. So one T and an E.
Love it. That's like when people, there's the reason why like my name is not available is because there's a rather ratchet porn star named Tiffany Carter. Which I think's amazing. And it's not like a glamour, like the level of porn star. It's like pretty. I mean, she's equal opportunity. I'll just say that, right? So I love that. There's always a story of why we can't have her handle. So yeah, it's Gaynette and then add an E. Go check her out. Shout out this episode. And I want to really see from you guys that, did this give you some permission to just go for the damn thing? Because what's your other option? What's it costing you to not do it? You want to be in the same place next year? You're going to be like scrolling, reading other people's shit, watching other people's shit, watching Gaynette, watching me. Why not put that time and energy into creating the damn thing for yourself? You have nothing to lose, because if you don't do it, just like she said, there aren't results. So you might as well try, right?
Exactly. Go for it. Nike strategy, and just do it.
Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate you just being transparent, sharing the real deal, that it's a shit show behind the scenes a lot of times. And you just gotta keep pivoting and keep going, because the other option is a guaranteed failure.
Thank you so much for having me, Tiffany. I appreciate you.
You're welcome. Bye, love.